Professor Stanley Krippner stands as a true trailblazer in the realm of consciousness exploration, pushing boundaries by delving into cross-cultural perspectives and the intriguing realm of non-ordinary experiences that boldly challenge conventional paradigms. With an extensive body of work, he is an award-winning prolific author, personal mythology and varieties of anomalous experience, and an esteemed researcher diving into diverse subjects such as dreaming, psychedelics, creativity, shamanism, parapsychology, and trauma.
Digital audio health by Cymatrax.
I'd like to welcome to the show Stanley Krippner, who has a memoir called A Chaotic Life. Welcome to the show, Stanley.
It's a pleasure to be with you, Rhonda.
Thank you so much. So can you tell the audience a little bit how your initial years shaped you for your genius?
Well, I assume you're asking about the title of my book. In chaos theory, a very small event can trigger unpredictable consequences. And that is basically what happened in my life. Nothing really worked out the way I planned it. But a small event produced unpredictable other events, for better or for worse, hopefully for the better. Yes. For example, I read comic strip about Mandrake the Magician when I was very, very young, and that triggered my interest in hypnosis. And that led to me reading popular books about hypnosis, and that led to me taking classes in hypnosis, and that led to me doing research in hypnosis.
And what type of, did you do any work in hypnosis?
Oh, good heavens, yes. I'm not a psychotherapist, but I did considerable work in many, many areas. I was probably the first person to use hypnosis to accelerate reading with students who had difficulty in comprehending the printed word. I did this both with elementary school students and with college students, and wrote several articles about that are still quoted to this day. And then I also used hypnosis in an attempt to investigate what's called ESP, or extrasensory perception, hypnotizing people and having them try to identify objects in a sealed envelope. And this also was published in journals. So that all came about from reading that comic strip when I was 10 or 11 years of age.
So you were teaching your students extrasensory perception?
Well, these were students I worked with at Kent State University years ago in the Child Study Center, and with their parents' permission, I hypnotized them and told them that they would be able to focus better on the printed word, that the words would sort of come to life and have special meaning to them, and happily to say it worked out. But then at the college level, I did the same thing with students referred to me by the dean of students, and I asked them if they would like to experiment with hypnosis, and all of them said they'd be delighted. And again, when I used hypnosis and then used the standard procedure of accelerating learning for disabled students, it worked out quite well.
Wonderful. So what do you feel influenced you in your younger years that helped you ending up working in this field?
Well, I've been active in several fields. I just mentioned hypnosis, and earlier this year at the American Psychological Association, much to my surprise, there's a symposium in my honor, and several people complimented me on the work that I had done on psychological hypnosis. Great surprise. But then I've also done work with dreams, and at the very, very early age, I started to remember my dreams, and when I was in high school, I started a dream diary, and this led to me doing a lot of research on dreams. When I was at the University of Wisconsin, my psychology professor gave a lecture. He mentioned dreams only one time. He said, people who dream in color are schizophrenic. And my friends and I looked at each other. We all dreamed in color. Did that mean we're schizophrenic? Well, that was bad advice. And then when I went to graduate school, a different psychology professor said, well, dreams are utterly without meaning. And again, that shocked us because we felt that the dreams were filled with meaning of one sort or another. So I had to self-educate myself on the topic of dreams. And some 25 years ago, when the International Association for the Study of Dreams was founded, I was a charter member. And this wonderful organization, which I certainly recommend to your listeners and viewers, pulls together people of different opinions, different statuses in dream research, lay people as well as professionals, and we all get together once a year for an international conference as well as local conferences. And this has been a significant advance in the overall and international study of dream research. We have a wonderful journal called Dreaming available to members, and this often has special issues like lucid dreaming, for example, where people are awake and aware while they're still sleeping. Again, my college professor said, no, that's impossible. You can't be awake and asleep at the same time. But now there's considerable research saying, yes, indeed, you can. And there are actually people that give courses on how to have lucid dreams. And so I've written many articles about dreams on a great variety of topics. I did the first study about the dreams of transgendered young people. And I also did some of the first studies showing how male and female dreams differ from each other. And I did this in several different countries, half a dozen different countries. So I specialized in gender differences in dreams. And then for 10 years in Brooklyn, New York, at the Mythology Medical Center, I directed a project in dream telepathy, where people in our soundproof room, cutting out all distractions, would dream about a picture that our experimenter in a distance room was looking at, a picture chosen randomly at the last minute. And we got statistically significant results in a dozen studies, published them all in professional journals, got replication from other laboratories. And again, just to give you an example, one night the experimenter picked a sealed envelope, went off to a distance room, opened it, and there was a painting, Tall Bellows, all members of the club. It was a boxing match, two boxers boxing against each other. Our dreamer had a dream that posed them. In my dream, I went to Madison Square Garden to buy tickets to a boxing match. I have no interest in boxing. Why did I have this dream? Well, obviously he had the dream because somebody in the district room had been sending it to him, and he had been reaching out to trying to receive it. I know this might sound preposterous, but in the field of parapsychology, we deal with preposterous things and try to study them experimentally. Again, all of this is a matter of record. Your viewers can look at our book, Dream Telepathy, can go to the serious literature on the topic. It is all there.
And did you come across dreamers who would dream ahead of time? Like they would dream something at night, and in the next few days, that would actually happen in their real life?
You know, again, this will sound preposterous to many of your listeners and viewers, but yes, we worked with an English psychic sensitive by the name of Malcolm Besson, who had been having dreams about future events. We said, well, let us put this to the experimental test. And so we arranged an 8-night study where his dreams would be collected by our experimenters. He would be in the soundproof room. The experimenter would look at the encephalograph, and when there were periods of rapid eye movements, they would wake him up and ask for a dream. And then, after his dreams were collected, he was given a number of pictures, and he was asked which picture came closest to your dreams. And these pictures were selected after he had finished dreaming. And again, he was able to do this at significant levels, way above the laws of trance. Yes, this sounds preposterous, but this is something continually investigated scientifically. One night, he had a very simple dream, a bowl of fruit. And on this event, there was a picture showing a bowl of fruit by Marc Chagall. And so he was right on target with that particular dream. Sometimes the dreams are a little bit more complicated, and he one time had a dream about being in a ship on Christmas Day, and the picture that was selected after he woke up was Salvador Dali showing a young boy dragging a ship with the Christian cross on it. Well, I could go on, but anybody that's interested in this can take a look at our book, Dream Telepathy, and they'll find dozens of examples. Of course, not all of our experiments produced significant results, but we published everything. Everything that we did, whether it confirmed our hypothesis or whether it did not. So over the years, we have actually dozens of experimental sessions, and they're all there. And the net effect was that something is happening, enabling people to dream about a distant picture or dream about a future picture under laboratory conditions.
So when I was pregnant for my son, I dreamed that I was going to deliver a baby boy. And when I was pregnant with my daughter, I dreamed that I was going to have a little girl. Have you ever heard of that?
Oh, yes. I should ask you, were your dreams accurate?
My dreams were accurate. Yes, they were accurate.
There was a study in Romania that did a long-term study of this very process, and more often than not, the dream predicted the gender of the baby.
Yes.
And again, this might not be entirely precognitive, because the body of a pregnant woman will behave differently if she's pregnant with a boy or different than a girl. These are subtle differences, but again, if this is their first birth, they wouldn't know about that. And so the Romanian study focused on first birth, where one would have no idea, even unconsciously, of what was going on with the body. So yes, this predicting the gender of a baby has been investigated a few times, and more often than not, it's correct. Thank you for sharing your experience. Yes.
And so with extra sensory perception, is that when you know something ahead of time?
That's one example of extrasensory perception. That is called precognition by parapsychologists. Clairvoyance is getting information about a distant event. And telepathy is getting information from somebody's mind who is not present at that time.
Yes.
So those are the three main types of phenomena called extrasensory perception.
I have all of them.
Well, there you are.
Yeah. So I've had a great interest in it. I would keep this information to myself because, I shared it with a couple of people and they're like, I never have felt that, or I've never knew something ahead of time. And so I ended up keeping my gifts to myself until the world kind of caught up with this type of language about these special abilities that some people do have. Do you have some of these abilities?
Well, I don't profess to have many of those abilities myself. Every now and then, I have a dream about what a friend of mine is doing that is correct. But I only was in a study myself in our dream laboratory, and I did have a dream about being on the verge of a cliff, looking down into an abyss and about to lose my balance. And sure enough, the picture that was being focused on was exactly that, a sheer cliff with somebody at the edge of a cliff. So that's my one and only claim to experimental fame in terms of dream telepathy.
Well, that's wonderful. So when did you start writing your book called A Chaotic Life? When did you start writing that?
I had no intention to write such a book, but a university press proposed the idea, and I did have notes that I'd been keeping in a daybook going back decades, and so I used this as the foundation for the book. People say, well, you must have a terrific memory. No, not at all. It's all there. It's all there in the little dream journals that I've been keeping for decades. And obviously, I could not record everything. I just selected the incidents that I felt might be of most interest to the viewers.
So how old were you when you started your first journal?
These go back to 1955, when I was in college. And thank heavens, I didn't throw away those journals. I thought I'd be able to use them to check dates. My memory is not that good, but sometimes I need to check dates. about when something happened. Also, I thought, well, when I retire, I'll be able to look over these journals and sort of connect the dots and figure out what happened and how it happened. And writing the book enabled me to do it. I was able to find connections in my life that I had really ignored. Sometimes, as I say, for the better, sometimes for the worse. But it was very worthwhile to me to connect the dots. So it served a purpose for me too, and hopefully it'll be of some interest to readers. But I tell the reader, do not order the bound copies of the books because they leave out all of my early years. Get the electronic version. That contains everything. It's cheaper too.
Even the early years are in the electronic edition?
Yeah, the electronic edition has all 50 chapters, yes.
Yes. And well, I mean, it's remarkable. It really is that a person would keep a journal for that long and also use it as a reference to remember certain things. So were you looking back to remember certain dates when things happen or connections with people that you met?
Yes, indeed. I'm actually very poor on date. If somebody asks me the date, I'm lucky if I remember the exact decade. So having these little journals, actually just a few lines for every date. Some people keep extensive diaries. No, these are not diaries. These are very, very simple journals. But those little notes did enable me to remember enough to write an interesting story about it. For example, I remember when my cousin, Martha Gate, came home from the Second World War, and she's a changed person. She used to be very lively, very effervescent. Now she's very somber, and I knew this was a result of her being imprisoned during the duration of the war in a Japanese camp, sometimes getting just one meal a day. And she never retained her joy of life that she had before she went to the Philippines to serve. And this led to me taking an interest in post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yes.
When I read about PTSD, I thought, oh my God, this is exactly what my cousin Martha was suffering. And so I was able to write and co-author, because I'm not a psychotherapist, had to have some counselors helping me to write 2 books about PTSD that got very good reviews and several chapters about PTSD. And also, I urged therapists who were working with PTSD to focus on the PTSD nightmares first before they do anything else. If the nightmares can be solved, then everything else falls into line. Typical nightmares are scary, but they have plots, they have characters. The PTSD nightmare is a rehashing of the trauma, of the rape, of the accident, of accidentally killing a little girl in Vietnam, etc. And in imagery rehearsal therapy, people during the day focus on that nightmare, and they try to make it change in one way or another, either to give it a more happy ending or to resolve it in one way or another. And when somebody dreams, it's a full brain phenomenon. The electrochemical discharge starts in the pons in the old brain. It continues to the midbrain, to the amygdala, hippocampus, memory and emotion. Then goes to the cortex that provides the plot and the characters and the scenario. In PTSD type, it's stuck in the midbrain, stuck in the memories, stuck in the emotions, because they are so vivid in the trauma. And so imagery rehearsal therapy helps propel those dreams into the cortex where they can be put into a scenario that can be worked with and discharged. One of the main functions of dreams is to discharge emotions and work the emotions, one of many functions. And ordinary dreams will allow somebody to do it. That's why people should not be upset if they have unpleasant dreams. They serve a purpose. They help to discharge the emotions. Dreams have other functions too, like problem solving and storing memories and the like. But discharging emotions is one of the most basic reasons why we dream. So I hope that answers that question.
Yes. So the purpose of dreaming is to review charged emotions that you may have had during the day from post-traumatic stress disorder in order for the brain to make sense of that?
Well, again,
or process it.
Yeah, for dreams to have served an evolutionary purpose,
yes,
they must have had at least one function. And I believe that they had several functions, not only discharging emotions, but in reviewing the events of the day and storing the information that is most helpful and discarding the information that's not most helpful. Also, problem solving. Also, some dreams have spiritual purposes. And some dreams are about the future. Dreams have many, many functions. And as I say, the trauma dreams get stuck and don't go to the cortex where they can be turned into a story. The reason that dreams are so fantastic is they condense a lot of information. Dreams are basically thinking and feeling in a different state of consciousness, in a different electrochemical status of the brain. So you can't expect dreams to make sense as they do when we're awake. Dreams have their own language, and by decoding the language, we can get some meaning from them that's often helpful. And again, I've written many books about how people can work with their own dreams and can decode the somewhat bizarre patterns that appear in a dream. For example, some of your listeners would like to try this out. Take a dream that has a strong emotion in it and take that emotion back into time. When did you have that feeling before? And what happened? Maybe you can take it back a month, maybe you can take it back to your childhood. But what happened when you had that emotion before? Imagine that scene, imagine the consequences of that, imagine what you were doing. And then take that back to the dream, and there usually be a match. Because the dream is trying to help you work through that emotion with that somewhat fantastic scenario. That's just one of many, many ways of working with dreams. And my colleagues, such as Gail Delaney, Patricia Garfield, etc., have written wonderful books about working with dreams.
Because I've come across some books where they're categorized by the subject. Like if you dreamt about boating, or if you dreamt about, something scary, and try and decode it. But it's interesting. I mean, some people have dream books where they write down their dreams as soon as they wake up in the morning to see if they can decode, and there might be some mystery in there.
Well, of course, it's a good idea to write down one's dreams, but I worked with one woman who brought me her dream diary. She remembered 2 or 3 dreams a night, wrote them all down. She didn't have time to work with her dreams. She was so busy writing all the dreams down. That doesn't make sense. If you want to write down dreams, most people are lucky if they remember 1 dream a week. But do something with the dream. Not only write it down, do something so that you can understand how the dream is trying to help you out.
And do you feel that your dreams are helping you out, other than the processing of your day or giving you some information about the future? Because I've had information about the future come into my dreams. Is there any other significance of dreams than that?
Well, you're right about the future. Dreams are often a rehearsal for the future.
Beautiful.
Yeah, not necessarily precognitive, but you can dream about something and it puts you in a better position to take action on a future event. So dream rehearsal is a basic function of dreams as well as the problem solving, as well as the downloading of emotions, as well as the storing of useful memories. Even animals have rapid eye movement.
Yes.
And one experiment, rats were secured, electrodes were put in their brains, and they're running through mazes. And when they found the trees, there was a significant change in their brainwave. Now, then the rats went to sleep, and when they were asleep, their brainwaves were also monitored. And what happened? That little flash showed up in their dream. This means that the rats were storing away the memory of how to get to the trees. And the work on rapid eye movement with animals is just beginning. And virtually all animals, especially mammals, have rapid eye movement. But even birds have a few rapid eye movement. And so the sleep dream cycle is something that goes back to our evolutionary beginning. And so again, very, very important. Even if people don't remember their dreams, they should be assured that their dreams are working on their behalf.
And have you done any studies on people who have nightmares? That's an odd thing, though, to be able to capture that, right? To capture somebody in a nightmare.
Are you talking about ordinary nightmares now?
Yeah, so let's say I went to bed tonight and I woke up, in a nightmare where I am sweating and terrified. Have you done any study on why that occurs? Like why and why do children have nightmares?
Oh, good heavens. Yes, I'm glad you asked the question. This is very important. Parents need to know the difference with children between nightmare and night terror.
Okay.
Children
Right.
often wake up in the middle of the night, alarmed, sometimes even screaming, but they don't remember a dream. This is not a dream, it's a night terror. This is part of growing up when the brain is starting to mature, putting things together, and it's a little threat. And many children have these night terrors off and on, maybe for a couple of years, but they pass. So parents need to comfort those children and assure them that this is part of maturation, part of growing up. Very, very different than a child's nightmares, where the child wakes up and remembers something scary. Children often have nightmares about monsters, about big, gigantic demons or giants that, this reflects that child's natural fear that they're in the mercy of adults that have more power than they have. And even though the adult might be very benevolent, like a parent or a caregiver, they still unconscious are aware that they don't have much power compared to other people in their life. So again, the best the parents can do is to simply comfort the child, have the child relay the dream, and telling the dream is therapeutic in and of itself. Now, if a child has frequent nightmares, not talking about night terrors, frequent nightmares, this might be something that is indicative of some biochemical problem in the brain, some disease coming on, some ailment. This might require a visit to a sleep specialist. And I should also mention with everybody, sometimes eating a strange food will trigger a nightmare, or being in a strange place might trigger a nightmare. Well, this is just the body adjusting to that new food or that new environment. So nightmares come in many, many different shapes and sizes. And if people are vitally interested in the topic, just go to the internet and see what you can find about nightmares there that might be helpful.
Yeah, wonderful. So, of all of the work that you have done in your life, and you've done many, many things in your life, many, 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 many things in your life, what is your favorite topic that you have studied and why?
Well, I might say that I have made contributions in several different fields. Now, I'm not the only one, so I'm not bragging, but I've certainly made contributions to the study of psychological hypnosis, made contributions to the study of PTSD nightmares, made contributions to parapsychology, made contributions to the study of dreams, gender differences in dreams specifically. Also, I was one of the first to urge for psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy. Back 50 years ago, it was in disrepute. It was being used on the street. People were having panics. It was banned by the government. What a shame. Now, all these years later, psychedelics are being used to counter depression, psilocybin especially. And again, it has to be administered by people who are knowledgeable and ethical in uncontrolled settings, but with the right type of therapist, it can be very, very helpful. At the same time, psychedelics are not a cure-all. They cannot be used effectively to treat schizophrenia or bipolar disorder. They're more helpful to a whole variety of what we call neurotic disorders.
Okay.
And I was also instrumental in interviewing artists and musicians who claimed that psychedelics have fostered their creativity.
Oh, yeah.
And I have several articles on the way that creativity can sometimes be fostered by psychedelics. One artist I interviewed, Kyle Izumi in Canada, took psychedelics when he was designing a new mental hospital, and he learned not to have a lot of sharp angled walls. That made the mental patients even worse. Walls had to be grounded and circular. And so he built this into his, in other words, innocent copy ever since. And I think that, again, if you go back far enough to the 1970s, I was one of the first to urge for the legalization of marijuana. I was so upset to see young people thrown in jail for long prison sentences because of the stereotypes that were attached to marijuana. Not that I'm in favor of haphazard use of marijuana, but sometimes the cure is worse than the disease. And all these years later, marijuana is now being used for medical purposes, and it can even be used sparingly for recreational purposes. But I really was fighting the mainstream wall of opinion back in the 1970s as I was making those recommendations. So again, to answer your question, what have I learned? I think my main focus is built on curiosity. I've always been interested in learning new things.
Yes.
And so when I find something that interests me, I have learned to study it through the lens of psychological science. I take a scientific approach to everything that I study. I don't believe anything is supernatural. I don't think anything is dictated by some ephemeral fate. I'm very, very down to earth and practical. Okay, let's see how this can be studied and hopefully put to use. And I'm still learning,
And
especially from my students. All of the doctoral dissertations supervised, I've learned from them. I'm still working with doctoral students, learning something every time I get some of their papers. And I think that the bottom line that I've learned in terms of my studies of the literature is that above and beyond everything else, the universe is based in a ground of consciousness. The theologian Paul Tillich called this the ground of being, his term for God. And this ground of consciousness is love and connection. When somebody does something loving, they make connection. When somebody does something hateful, they're disrupting connection. So you ask what I have learned. Love is the basis of everything positive.
Well, everything grows from love, doesn't it? And, children who are loved and cared for, their brain is more healthy. They learn quicker in school and all of those things. And then, on the other side of that, when you have angry people around children when they're school age, they find it difficult to learn.
Well, good heavens, there are so many answers I can give to those questions.
Yeah.
One of my recent books is Understanding Suicide's Allure. And one of the main focuses of the book is bullying in school and how bullying can actually lead to suicide.
Yes.
Of course, it's completely irrational, but this is one of the challenges that students will face as they go through school. One of many challenges. Another challenge, of course, are the clique and the peer group for children to cope with. These are above and beyond all of the learning challenges in terms of keeping up with what's going on. I mean, we're now in the age of artificial intelligence. We're in the age of the internet, in the age of the TikTok, social media. Good heavens, these are challenges for our children. Challenges that I think are pretty much unparalleled. And this calls for great understanding, great love on the part of their parents, and an openness to simply listening to children when they want to tell parents something.
And sometimes looking for the cues when children, want to tell their parents something, but they don't know how to tell their parents something. And so the cues that they give their parents is sort of aloofness and hanging around them, but not saying things, or indications as well. They want to talk to their parents about something. Do you need to be in a meeting now, Stanley?
Yes, I do. So this will be our last comment. It's a good comment in terms of parents. I think parents can help children looking things up on the internet, looking things up on ebooks, looking things up. There's so much media. Not all of it is trustworthy, but by finding respected sources that children can learn from, and parents can join their children in a search of discovery for all of these problems. This is a good note to end on because, of course, children are our ultimate resources, and children are going to carry on all the good work that we have done.
Exactly. They're our future. Thank you so much, Stanley. I've really enjoyed being in your company. Your energy is beautiful and your knowledge is so deep. I mean, I think we could sit here and talk for another couple of hours and still not really cover everything that I'd like to hear from you.
Well, we can do it again, but in the meantime, thank you for your intelligent questions. It's always a pleasure to be on a podcast where somebody knows the right questions to ask.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. So hopefully we can do this again soon.
Okay.
Take care.
Okay.
Bye.
So long for now.
So long. Thank you for listening to Courting Your Soul with Rhonda Grant, whose podcast has been treated with digital audio health by my sponsor, Psychedelics.
Theme song for Courting Your Soul is Sun on the Water, composed and performed by John Park Wheeler.